Hello and welcome to the Poor Hammer Podcast, episode 40. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And it's 11 o'clock on a work night. You know what that means. It's time to record a last-second podcast that we threw together because we're running late this week. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the mascots for every faction.
Sounds good.
All right, Eric, before we get into every faction's mascot, let's define what we mean by a mascot. To me, this is what you show someone when you want to get them hyped for the faction and go, this is the fantasy of this faction. Whether or not the model is any good doesn't matter too much, but it's like, this is embodying what this faction is about.
Yeah, it's about, at least to me, this was kind of like, look at these models and frame your expectation of the faction around this. And yeah, you might not use it, but that's what you're trying to push, and that's what you're going to enjoy out of it.
And we're not going to worry about the reality of like what the strongest model in a faction is in 9th edition right now. We don't care about that.
No. This is what looks cool, what follows with what you would expect out of the faction. Just like fun stuff, not, oh, but this rule's better than that rule list, but that one's 10 more points. Nah, I don't give shit. Show me the model, it looks cool, and it embodies what I want out of the faction. Sounds good, you're a mascot. You're hired.
Alright, so let's start off with Sisters of Battle. And immediately, we have 2 of them, meaning we screwed up.
Yeah, to me, it's the Zephyrim. I think that's how you say that. It's the, like, flying wing ladies that feels very Sisters to me, where they're just kind of, like, flying around and bringing down justice.
Yes, and I went for the other angle. I've got Retributors as the one that I think of, which is, I think of the nuns with guns, specifically big guns that spew fire. And then you've got the angelic angle, and I get both of these representing the faction incredibly well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to bring up some of their cool tanks, but, like, that's just something that I like. It doesn't actually, like, represent the faction, in my opinion.
I would almost give you that specifically Sisters tanks are more Sisters than anyone else's, like, generic Rhino variant is theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only ones that could come close would be Orks, but that's, like, a whole separate thing from being a Xenos. But yeah, the Sisters tanks are very unique to them. But I do think that Zephyrim, Retributor, those are probably the ones that you show somebody and you'd be like, this is nuns with guns or angelic divine retribution type stuff. Like, that just works well.
But warped toward a, like, gothic, kind of depressing look.
Oh, yeah.
It's not angelic in, like, a happy way.
No, definitely not. I guess we can move on into Custodes. There's not too much unique with Custodes. Like, they're the last bastion. They stand guard.
Yeah, and it's the Alaris Terminator. It sums up the Custodes.
Yep.
I just think of the Terminator holding the flag, which, again, there's just the normal Alaris Terminators with the axes is, like, another great look where they've got those sweet capes coming off of their legs.
Honestly, the cape sells it to me for Custodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for some reason, the cape is just, like, burned into my brain for Custodes of, like...
And one of the best Grey Knight conversions I ever saw that was way too expensive to, like, actually expect someone to do was where they took the Custode legs and did the Grey Knight tops for Paladins on top. And it, like, makes them much taller, and they get that nice cape thing going on. It looks so good.
Yeah, I mean, they're expensive as hell, but it definitely looks really cool and definitely feels more Paladin-y. But Custodes is the Alaris Terminator, and it's a slam dunk.
All right, so let's keep this ball rolling into AdMech. There's a lot of options in AdMech. They have a wonderful look.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the Tech Priest Dominus. I love the hunched scientist figure with the big fuck-off axe. Like, to me, that just is what I think of when I think of AdMech. It's just ingrained in my mind, that model.
And I agree with you, but I would take it a step further and say it's just Call. Like, the Call model is basically that, but, like, taken to the extreme kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess because Call's a character, he doesn't do that in my mind the same way the generic version of the Tech Priest Dominus does. But yes, they're very similar.
The idea of the Tech Priest Dominus Cull being like the special version of it, like that aesthetic, I think that nails it pretty well. I mean, it does kind of show off a lot of the parts of AdMech, though, of like, they've got a bunch of spindly, mechanically bits coming off of everything.
Importantly, there is an awkward servo skull that you will break off of your model the first time you go to pick it up in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic lesson, right built into this model, in both cases.
Yeah, don't touch the model or it'll break. That's the lesson, right?
Yeah. All right, so for a very timely one, let's do Imperial Guard and their famous battle tank.
The Leman Russ.
Yes. Not the Rogel Dorn, which looks 100 times better. It doesn't count. It's not a classic yet.
In a year or two, it is going to be that. But until then, we've got the Leman Russ still. The Rogel Dorn looks amazing. It honestly does. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, the Russ is just a classic, though. Like, I get it. It's your bog standard battle tank.
Yeah. There's nothing special with it, and it fits into Guard very well with being that, though.
You've got 10 different turret options. All of them suck except for the ugliest one at any given point in time.
Yeah, it makes the, like, kind of squatty looking tank look worse.
I've always loved the look of the plasma one, but it's not the classic look to me. It's just the one that I think looks the coolest.
That's fair. And it is kind of nice that there are options, and like the Leman Russ does show off those kind of options. But we can move into Grey Knights, and this one's a pretty easy slam dunk.
Right, it's the Dread Knight. Oh.
No, that's the best, but the Paladins are like the embodiment of what Grey Knights are. It's the Psychers that are just badasses, and they do a pretty good job of it. I would like to say Kaldor Drago, but I hate his sword enough that I'm never going to show anybody that.
Drago is just an awful model in reality. The second you put the Finecast Drago together and you like put it next to anything else,
It's awful. Yeah.
he's also kind of short because he's like super ancient as a model, so he looks smaller than everybody else. I think Voldis is a great example, like a very modern sculpt.
Yeah, I mean, he comes with the hammer as well.
Mm-hmm. Which I always think of hammers when I think of paladins, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to Paladins, like, you gotta have the hammer. That's just, like, part of the thing. But, yeah, to me, it's the Paladin. As much as there are better options for competitive, I think the Paladin's what shows off the best mascot.
Speaking of paladins, let's talk about Imperial Knights and the Knight Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't what I had thought of originally, but then again, to me, all of the Knights look the same.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cheating that, like, Imperial Knights, if you swap the weapon, you swap the knight name, which is kind of silly. That we don't do that in Chaos. We just tell you what our guns are.
Yeah.
But they have a name for every weapon swap you do. Just magnetize your knight and you're fine. But the Knight Paladin is the classic look. Even though the battle cannon has never been good in history, it looks so right.
Yeah, it does. It really does. We can move on to Space Marines.
We're going to cheat. All right, let's talk about Space Marines. We're going to go by book, even though we shouldn't. So for the core Space Marines, for me, it's the Assault Intercessor or the Redemptor Dread.
And I had agreed with the Assault Intercessor until you brought up Redemptor Dread, and I'm like, nah, I think Redemptor Dread makes more sense to me.
And I agree. To me, it's the Redemptor Dread. If you're trying to make someone like Space Marines, the Redemptor Dread is the coolest thing they've got going for them.
Yeah.
But I think the Assault Intercessor is the coolest Space Marine.
It's the right expectation for what you're going to get out of a Space Marine. It's the dude in a suit.
Yes. He's got a chainsword in one hand, and in his other hand, he's got a gun.
Yeah, like, it hits all the expectations that you want, but I do think the Redemptor Dread is like this hits all the things, but is also actually really cool. So.
All right, and let's real quick hit all of the ones that have their own codex and their own extra models, just for what their extra models that are worth talking about are. For Space Wolves, it's the Thunderwolf Cavalry, because it's, let's be honest here, the only reason that anyone would want to play Space Wolves.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, it's pretty obviously, that's what you're getting to with Space Wolves. Blood Angels, Sanguinary Guard.
Yeah, and it's, again, like, when you get into Blood Angels, the Sanguinary Guard are the cool thing they've got going for them.
And I do think they are kind of cool, so I'll give them that. But
I wish they had a modern sculpt. Other than the fact that they are super short for no reason, I love their kit.
yeah, an update would be nice.
And then into Dark Angels, it's the Deathwing Knights, because let's be honest, Dark Angels are lame, but at least having a hood on a Terminator looks really cool.
And the little, like, follower is so fucking cool.
And they get the coolest shields. I will give Dark Angels that. I don't have much positive to say about you people, but those shields are great.
Yes, absolutely.
Very jealous of Dark Angel players for those.
Yeah, definitely. I guess we can move on to Deathwatch, which is Deathwatch Kill Team. I don't know, dude.
Deathwatch is boring.
It's basically an Ultramarine that's been painted black instead of blue.
Correct, 1/10 of them are.
So, super cool.
And then for Black Templars, it's clearly Emperor's Champion. I would say Emperor's Champion, the new model and the old model, the original from God knows when, managed to be such good-looking kits, they make people want to play Black Templars.
It honestly does. At least to me, I want to take a bunch of their stuff, like that sword, and give it to Drago. And, like, it's really cool. Like, the Emperor's Champion actually is a very cool model to me.
I think Space Marine armor, because they do the Emperor's Champion, doesn't have an Aquila. He's supposed to have, like, the no icons thing going on, so his is, like, shaved off. It's such a good look.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's beautiful with the new Primaris helmet.
But that's enough Space Marines. We can move on to Demons.
Which we'll also cheat here, and we'll do one for each god, because it's kind of dumb to just name a Khorne unit.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the Khorne unit is the default if you only had to pick one, which is the Bloodletters. Because if you're in any 40K book, and it's not like themed after a specific faction, and a demon shows up and they describe it, it ends up being a Bloodletter.
Yeah, if we had to only choose one, it would be a Bloodletter, and it makes sense. It's like the classic demon kind of thing.
Bloodthirsters are cooler than Bloodletters, but Bloodletters are kind of what I think of when I think of Khorne.
Yeah, Bloodthirsters are definitely cooler. Like, that's not even not even a question. But Bloodletters, I think, make sense. And since we're going to cheat, we're going to do one for each of them. I think of Nurglings.
Yeah.
The Great Unclean one makes sense, but I think Nurglings just embody that more.
Nurgle has a lot of good options, but Nurglings are the marketable part of 40K. Like, they are the dumb, cute, stupid, kind of gross thing.
Yeah, it does a good job of showing that, like, Nurgle is disgusting, but it can also have a bit of fun with the, like, oh, it's lovably disgusting.
Yes.
And that's the Nurglings. So
going into Slaanesh, it's obviously the Keeper of Secrets. That model is absolutely gorgeous.
yeah. And similarly, we've got the Lord of Change for Tzeentch.
Yes, the best model in all of 40K, my Big Bird.
Maybe not, but it's definitely up there.
I love my Big Bird. You leave him alone.
Honestly, I like one of the Khatans more, but
yeah, okay, that's fair.
But I think those Bloodletters, Nurglings, Keeper of Secrets, Lord of Change kind of embody each aspect for the gods and demons.
Yeah, you could very easily cheat and just choose the 4 greater demons.
Yeah.
Or you could just say, like a demon prince.
Yeah.
But I like the 4 we landed on. Let's keep this rolling. For Chaos Knights, we've got the Knight Abominant, the new one, Mr. Noodle Arms.
Yeah. I was hesitant putting this because, like, it is the new one, and it's like we're trying to do mascots.
But we've got, like, 3 models, so there's not much to choose from.
Yeah. And the Abominant with the noodle arms does give the chaosy feel to the Knights, and I like that.
I think it's done it best.
Yeah.
He's got his Vulture friends. Sorry, I'm corrected. They're called Tarot Shades.
Oh.
They're not vultures. They are Tarot Shades, legally distinct from the Vulture.
Yeah, because, Big Vulture Corp is going to come and sue you.
No, it's important that you can't sue someone for using a vulture. You can sue them for using a tarot shade.
Yeah. But I do think that the Abominant, even if it hasn't quite had enough time to really, like, solidify its spot, I think it will definitely, and it already kind of has. So
I would say it kind of has. Like, if you go through the new Chaos Knight Codex, there's as many Abominant Arts as there is anything else.
Makes sense.
So let's keep going into Chaos Space Marines.
It's the Noise Marine.
Yes, you're right. For Emperor's Children, you're right.
I love that model.
I would say the Raptors are like the way to showcase the difference between how Chaos Space Marines and Space Marines are from like a lore perspective.
Yeah.
Like, yes, there is an equivalent for most units between the two armies.
Yes.
But showing someone the Assault Intercessor or the Redemptor Dread on one side and showing them the Raptors and saying, and then this is Chaos Space Marines, they don't just see Space Marine but spiky, they see, oh, they're crazy with jetpacks, and you see the difference. You can feel it between those two kits.
There's like a tech difference, feeling of like, oh, it's not just spikes. There's also like...
They're wily.
Yeah, there's more to it. And yeah, the Raptor makes sense, but I still think the Noise Marine.
Fair enough.
We can move on to Deathguard. And so I was originally going with the Plague Burst Crawler because I like the artillery aspect of it, but you brought up the Death Shroud Terminator, and I completely agree that that makes sense as like if we can only have one, that's probably the choice.
Yeah, to me, whenever I try to like hype up Deathguard internally in my head, I immediately think of the Death Shroud Terminators holding scythes.
Yep, it's the scythe that like really sells it.
It feels less generic.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, that's as much as I do like the artillery stuff, the scythe does kind of show off that like, oh, it's not just like fat Terminators.
All right, getting into the Thousand Suns, GW would like us to believe it's the Zongor based off of what they do in every boxed release for anything Tzeentch related.
I don't understand it, dude. I just don't get it.
That kit has to have lost them like $500,000+ or something, and they're just like at that like sunk cost fallacy of like, make them like Zongor.
Yeah. I guess.
We're $2 million in the hole on development of the Zongor line. We've got to make it back somehow. They'll eventually like them if we keep forcing them down their throats.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not something that I would use as the mascot front-facing thing, though. We've got better from Thousand Suns.
You know, there's like the rubrics, there's Scarab Occult Terminators have a warm place in my heart. But like the sales pitch for Thousand Suns is, we are the psychic army, and nothing is more psychic-y looking than our Exalted Sorcerers of, it is literally a mage in power armor.
Yep.
The dude's got a staff floating on a magic disc on fire. He's got candelabras on his power pack on his back. The other guy's got a vulture head. There's so many cool Exalted Sorcerer things. It's the coolest kit that we have because it's got 1 trillion bits and you can build all sorts of different ways for your custom OC character. It's like the sales pitch for Thousand Suns.
Yeah, and they've got like the interesting, I don't know what they're called, headdresses or whatever.
Yeah, there's so many heads in that kit.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, the Exalted Sorcerers slam dunk for Thousand Suns. Like that's so much better than the Zangor.
I like Zongor, but damn it, stop putting them in everything. Or make them good.
Yeah. We can move on to Craftworld. So we've got the Farseer on bike, in my opinion.
Sure, the Skyrunner, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the base Farseer too. I like both. I just like the Farseer.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But it's you've got your haughty elf who is also like the world's best mage, man. And then he can also have a bike, because why not?
Yeah, right. And I think that he can also have a bike because why not? Like really sells the Craftworld
opinion on everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're better than you. Also, we can just take bikes.
So I guess we can also hit Quins. Harlequins is the troops. I mean, there's not too many options that we have to choose as the face.
Well, man, we've got a whopping 8 to choose from. Which one are we going to pick?
But the troops are so cool. Like, they're just perfect Harlequins.
Yeah. if you're going to pick Harlequins, you're doing it because you saw the troop and you went, that's what I want.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun paint schemes that you could do with it as well, and the troops are what you did. So
you're not forced into doing the diamonds. There are plenty of good paint schemes without diamonds. Don't kill yourselves putting diamonds on them. It does look sick as hell, though.
I was going to say, I do think the diamonds look very cool, but there are a lot of other options as well. So, like, it's not just like, oh, if you paint things perfectly, the troops are cool. No, it's like, the troops are cool, and you can paint them in a lot of ways. But moving on, Drukhari.
All right, so I originally was trying to keep it to one, and I put Incubi.
And I agree. The Incubi is the one.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to do was, this is like a triple prong army. It's 3 armies in one book. And it's the Incubi, which are like the coolest thing Cabalite related I'm aware. They're technically blades for hire, but they represent the Cabalite portion of the army.
Yeah.
Then you've got witches, which, well, represent the witch cults.
Shocking.
And the Talos, which represents the homunculi covens and the whole body horror aspect.
And these 3 models do such a good job of talking and showing about those different aspects to the faction. Like, you look at them and you're like, oh, I immediately understand the differences between these 3, even though this is all just in one codex.
Yes, you can feel it. The second you look at it, you're like, they are all related. I can tell.
Yeah.
Based off like the general spiky nature, very lithe, other than the Talos, which is obviously like a body horror project.
There's features that are shared throughout it all, but there's enough uniqueness between the 3 that it's pretty obvious.
Yes.
So let's hit NIDS. And for me, Tyranids is the Carnifex because it reminds me of StarCraft's Ultralisk, and that's too cool. But
I can see the Carnifex. To me, it was very clear in my head of there's 2 ways I look at Tyranids, either monsters or swarms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the swarm half, the Hormagaunts are the representation. Like, it's what people think of when they think of a swarm of Tyranids, is a bunch of Hormagaunts climbing over, ripping stuff apart with their giant talon hands.
Yeah, the Zerglings, right.
And then, yeah. And then, from a monster standpoint, the be-all, end-all for me is the Hive Tyrant with wings. Like that beautiful, big, broad silhouette up in the air.
And specifically, it has to be the Hive Tyrant with wings. The Hive Tyrant itself is not something to sell people on Tyranids.
Deceptively small model, actually.
Yeah. So I could agree. Hive Tyrant with wings or Hormagaunts. But I'll have a special little place for my Carnifex Ultralisk.
Look, everyone loves Old One-Eye.
That's true.
While we're on the subject of Tyranids, let's talk about the worst cultists ever who always die when they're successful, the Genestealer cults.
That's one way to bring it up. To me, it's the Abominate, because it really shows off the, like, you're doing things to humans that shouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm. Although I say the Atellan Jackals is the best representation of, like, the Mad Max look that Genestealers have.
Yeah.
Like, you've got dudes with their kind of fucked up heads with shotguns on obvious, like, off-roading bikes.
They're, like, utility vehicles that were, like, you took as a trip to the mine or whatever, and you've just turned it into this war vehicle that gets you around being crazy, Mad Maxy.
And the one guy's got, like, mining laser on his ATV. The other guy's got his like, emergency hatchet out.
Yeah, that does give off the fact that, like, these are people that have just been messed with and, like, turned Mad Max. So, yeah, that's fair. Oh, next up, we've got a nice easy one. The Squats, or as Brad always corrects me, the Leagues of Votann. We've got the Hecaton Land Fortress, and that's, like, hands down the best one.
It is. I love the Ninja Turtle truck.
I don't think I'm going to be getting into Leagues of Votann, but I'm almost certainly going to buy a Land Fortress because I like that model.
You play Orks, you can buy any vehicle, and it's totally on theme.
That's true. Man, the things you could do to the Land Fortress for Orks.
All you do is change it into, what do Orks call it, a Forktress? I forget what you guys call it. The Battle Wagon?
Battle Wagon, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you could take it. It just needs more DACA. But the Land Fortress does feel very Leagues of Votann of, like, this is the technology that they're doing, like, that they have. And it's different than what you get out of the Imperium.
Let's keep on rolling into Necrons. For me, when I think of Necrons and like selling someone on them, I look at like the new Crons is what I'm calling them.
Right, the Doomsday Arc.
No, the 9th edition refresh of I think of the Scorpec Destroyer is like...
Oh, not the Ghost Arc?
No, I hate the Ghost Arc and Doomsday Arc. I hate that these are your representation of my army. I despise these models.
Because it is the bony structure.
No.
Perfect Necron, Brad. Come on. You don't know your own army.
Eric and I are on very different ends of what it should look like to see a Necron unit. I will give you the Ghost Arc. It's kind of unique, but it's still dumb. The ribcage design is so stupid.
The thing is like, to me, the cage design, while I do agree it's kind of memey and like kind of dumb, it's very unique in nature. Like, it's not overlapped with a lot of other things.
It's true.
But I can accept that the newer, like, Scorpec Destroyers and stuff are just done better. Like, they are. The thing is like, I also think about one of my favorite models being the Votann, but it doesn't really make sense to show that off because, like, the Votanns aren't really Necrons.
They're not the same, and that's why I wouldn't show them. The thing that I could argue is Scarabs. If you want to go for like the 3 prongs of Necrons, the vehicle look, or the standard, Necron warrior spam look, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The canoptic part of the army or the destroyer part of the army. And you could look at it that way as like the 3. So you've got Scarabs, you've got a Ghost Arc filled with a bunch of warriors, and you've got the Scorpec Destroyer. And that's your 3 branches of Necrons. If only they all had equally good rules.
Yeah, they don't. But I agree with that. That makes sense. Let's move on to Orks. And this one, I think we're going to do similar. And like, if it was just one, it's the Orc boys. That's like not even like really a question because it's like, it's the boys.
No, I will still argue that it's the Commandos, which I think of as like the strict upgrade to boys in looks.
And that's why, like, I think if we were to argue, like, separating it out, maybe you could say the Commandos.
Sure.
Either way, the boys and Commandos, like, that's kind of what we're doing there. The Commandos are just a better model. Like, they are a substantially better designed model than the boys. It'd be nice if we had better boys, but that's what we got. So you've got, like, that aspect of the army. Then you've also got the Squig part of the army. So I would be like, the Beast Boss on Squigosaur. That kind of makes sense to me on what you're doing with that. And then you've got the best part of the army for most, which is...
the Squigs again.
No.
Oh.
Definitely the vehicles, Brad. The vehicles. Like, to me, Wazbomb Blastajet, it's so good. It's so cool. But you could go with any number of them, dude.
Yeah, I like the junkyard aesthetic. To me... the best representation of that is the Def Coptas or the Def Dread. Probably the Def Coptas because they're vehicles as opposed to the Def Dread just being like a can.
I do very much enjoy the Def Coptas because it's like, that shouldn't work. Very clearly
Which is
should not
the
work.
Beautiful orky thing. Like, they got like the 3 little propeller on top that are like tiny compared to the hunk of junk that is mostly a rocket.
Yeah, and it's just like, what? Sure, yeah. That sounds right. Orks. You got it. So, yeah, I do think that, like, Drukhari, there are 3 unique sections. I don't think Orks have quite done as well for rules-wise and stuff, but there is enough uniqueness and unique models that these are the ones that I would choose.
Yeah. And then let's round it off with the final one here. We've got Tau, and it's the Riptide.
It absolutely is the Riptide.
There is nothing else. It's the Riptide.
And I love it, too. Like, if you see the Riptide and you're like, that's the coolest thing ever, then you should play Tau.
I will give you the Cold Star Commander because it is the most Gundam-looking Tau model.
Yeah.
That would be the runner-up to me, but I think the Riptide is just so perfectly Tau.
Yeah, I think so. And, I mean, you could also show the little, like, robot thingies as well, because it's like, oh, hey, you get this, like, cute little followers as well.
The drones are part of the unit now, so, like,
yeah,
they're part of it. There you go.
Yeah.
You can see everything that's good about the army. Battle suits and adorable drones.
Yes, that's basically it.
Importantly, we're not talking about the Hammerhead. No one is getting into Tau for the tanks. We like battle suits. We're here for Gundams.
Yeah, definitely here for Gundams, not this is a tank with a big gun on it. Cool.
Not Kroot, not Hammerheads.
No, we're here for the Riptides. But I think we've hit all of them. I mean, we might have missed some random Space Marines or something, but whatever. They don't matter.
That does wrap up all the factions. I have to say this was kind of fun to like throw together and think of what embodies every faction the most. If you disagree with us, or you have like a strong reasoning for a different model to be the mascot for its faction, like this is clearly the Mickey Mouse of Space Marines.
Yeah.
Feel free to tell us about it, because I'm interested in other people's opinions on this. This is not a scientific study. This is mildly subjective.
Yeah, I would also love like to hear what the first model that you saw that was like, this is the army I'm going to do kind of thing, of like, I don't care what else is going on. This is the model I'm going to make.
Yeah, and I can tell you that. I did it with these ones. It's the Lord of Change got me loving Tzeentch.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the Scorpack Destroyer is what put me over the edge on fully committing to Necrons when we started and 9th edition wasn't out yet, but that video came out and the Scorpack Destroyer is in it. I was like, oh my god, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah, and I mean, Orks, the reason I'm there is for all of the cool, like, Wazbomb blasted jets and all that stuff. Like, as much as I love the Green Tide and boys, but like, those jets, man. But yeah, I'd love to hear what else because like I think a lot of this is subjective on like what got you into the army kind of thing.
Yeah.
So love to hear.
All right, but that does it for this week. So let's get out of here.
Sounds good.